What's up everybody, it's Igo, and I have a really good idea of what the next Xenoblade game is going to be. If you're new to the channel and interested in RPG content, consider subscribing. Let's jump right into it. So the first thing I want to clarify here is we are going to see another Xenoblade game. This was confirmed by Tetsuya Takahashi on June 9th of 2020 in an interview with Bloomberg. And something specifically he said that I thought was really interesting is he said that while he would like to bring more variety to the studio's projects, right now he should focus on increasing the value of the brand that he has already created with the Xenoblade Chronicles saga. So this tells me that he's going to continue the Xenoblade saga and that he wants to do something new with it, but he wants to keep the brand and continue to grow it. Xenoblade fans have been growing rapidly recently with the addition of Mythra and Pyra into Smash Bros. And the Twitter community, and in particular YouTubers like Chugga Conroy and Anel who've been covering Xenoblade content. So Xenoblade's been growing a lot recently, and with the successful game sales, we're very likely to see another game, especially with Tetsuya Takahashi, who was the head of Monolith and Xenoblade, confirming this. Now, there's three ideas I have for what we could have with a possible game, and I'm going to cover them in this order. The first one is a Xenoblade X port, a Xenoblade X2, so a completely new game based off of Xenoblade X. And then the third possibility is a Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let's jump right into Xenoblade X. So some of you have probably already seen my Xenoblade X video, I'll put it up here, of whether or not I thought the game would get ported. I think a Xenoblade X port is extremely likely, but I've found some new information over the 6 months of research that I've done recently, and that's while Takahashi would love to add Xenoblade X to the Switch and have tons of new people play it like they did with Xenoblade DE, putting over the game would take too much manpower that Monolith just doesn't have, and a lot of this has to do with the issue of the Wii U. The Wii U was not a well-designed console. It used a triple-core processor from the 90s. So when this console came out, it was a 20-year-old triple-core whack processor. The Wii U made no sense to develop games for. So when they were developing Xenoblade X, there was a lot of hoops they had to jump through to get the game developed. And so to port the game over to the Switch, you couldn't just do a direct port. They would have to literally rebuild the entire game from scratch. And so a Xenoblade X port to the Switch, well, I want to say there's going to be one, and I'm optimistic that there will be one at some point. I don't think it's going to be the next Xenoblade game, which is our focus of this video today. Now, something I think that has a little more merit to it is a Xenoblade X2. Those of you who have played Xenoblade X know that the story leaves a lot to be desired and can be summarized very quickly without leaving a single detail out. While there are many side quests that are enjoyable and a nice journey to add on to the game, there's so many unanswered questions at the end of Xenoblade X, and I can't get too into the grid of that because I'd obviously spoil the story, and while the story of the game isn't much, it's still exciting and a lot of fun. Now, where Xenoblade X, in particular, really shines is its gameplay. Xenoblade X has some of the best gameplay of all the Xenoblade games. I'd argue it's the best, although 2 is so good that it's hard to compete with the 2. I'd say they're somewhat even, although I am a bit more of a fan of X's fighting system just because I'm a giant mecha robot fan. You can see my Gundams back there. So I really like the fighting system of X. And so the idea of an X2 where they continue the story and answer all those questions that were left behind in X and keep that fighting system would be amazing, and I think it has some real merit to it because there was a lot of people who didn't have the opportunity to play Xenoblade X because it was on the Wii U, and the Wii U as a console alone didn't do very well, and as a result Xenoblade X also didn't sell very well. A lot of people now are picking up the copies secondhand for like $100+ on eBay, which is insane. If you can get a copy of the game though, I do highly suggest you play it. It's a load of fun. The only shortcoming I have with a Xenoblade X2 is the story. Now, Xenoblade X, while its story is very short and there's not a lot to it, the parts of it that are there are really important. And so to just make an X2 and answer all the questions that were in X, we have to have that story from Xenoblade Chronicles X in X2. So they're going to have to handle that some shape, way, or form. So it'd be interesting to see what they did that if they decided to make a Xenoblade X2. Now, the third and final idea here, and this is unfortunately the one you can't find a lot of information on. If you did, let me know in the comments. I'd be all over that and super excited to see it, as a Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Alright, so Xenoblade 3. This is the most likely game to come out of any of the games that I've talked about today. The tricky thing about a Xenoblade 3 is it's the one that's most likely to happen, and it's also the one we have the least information about. So it's a lot of guesswork. Because unlike Xenoblade X, Xenoblade 2 had a complete ending, and Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2 connected super seamlessly. And so, when you think about a Xenoblade 3, you have to kind of rack your brain a little bit, because there's a couple of options they could do with this. They could build a completely new story from scratch. They could continue too with the same characters. That is possible, but I can't get too into the grid of that because of spoiler reasons. And they could continue the story of 2 but with new characters, which is also kind of a little bit of a different possibility. And I'm excited. Because whatever they do, we know it's going to be great at the end of the day. That's, one of there's two things I can confirm out of this entire video and all this speculation. 1, we're going to get another Xenoblade game. 2, it's probably going to be really, really good. All the previous Xenoblade games have been absolute bangers, and they're phenomenal. And they're only going to get better as game development gets better, and we know that Monolith happens to make Breath of the Wild, and they're working on Breath of the Wild 2. Breath of the Wild was one of the best-selling games, was Game of the Year. So we know we have some really quality developers working on these games, and Tetsuya Takahashi with his storytelling and his history with the Xeno series. I think we have some really, really promising future games to come. I want to hear you guys' ideas in the comments. What do you think will be the next Xenoblade game? Is there something that I talked about that you maybe have some questions about or anything like that? Throw them down all in the comments. I also stream on Twitch every single Friday. I'll put my Twitch on screen. It's also in the description down below. And you can join me on stream and ask me questions there. And I also want to say thank you so much for 100 subscribers and all the support you guys give me on the channel. And thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.